The day Liam got engaged, he deliberately hired a few thugs to harass me. By the time I finished giving my statement at the police station and returned home, it was already dark. As I arrived, I overheard someone asking where I had been. Liam chuckled. I was afraid she'd cause trouble, so I made sure she spent the day at the police station. By the time she gets back, everything will already be settled. I stood outside the door, smiled bitterly, and shook my head. Then, I blocked Liam on every platform and turned away, boarding a plane overseas. That night, I heard Liam couldn't find me. The man, usually so composed, finally lost control, his eyes bloodshot as he muttered, "She must be jealous. She's doing this out of spite. She'll come back once she calms down. She has to." What he didn't realize was that I wasn't running away in anger. I was leaving him for good. By the time I finished at the police station, the sky was already dark. On the day of Liam's engagement, I was flustered and crashed my car while turning a corner. The other party dragged the situation out on purpose, which is why it took so long to resolve. Liam's phone was unreachable the entire time. Social media was flooded with photos of him and his fiancée, each image stabbing into my heart. I was furious, overwhelmed by the day's grievances and anger, desperate for an outlet. Without thinking, I took a cab straight to his house. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear voices inside, sometimes. Liam would bring friends home to drink or watch sports. I hadn't intended to eavesdrop, but when I heard them talking about me, I stopped. To be honest, we all thought Liam would end up with Susan, James said with a hint of regret. She grew up with him, beautiful, but way too hot-tempered. She's spoiled, he added. All that drama for so many years, it's exhausting. Liam sat slouched on the sofa, glancing at his watch with irritation clouding his usually handsome features. She should have been here by now, he said, calculating. He could already picture me crying and making a scene. Just the thought of it gave him a headache. Honestly, it's surprising. You're engaged to Linda, and Susan didn't go crazy? Where could she be all day? James asked. Liam chuckled. I made sure she spent the day at the police station, so she wouldn't cause trouble. By the time she's back, it'll all be over. That's genius, Zach laughed. Only Liam can handle Susan like that. Have you ever thought about what would happen if Susan got so heartbroken that she just left? James asked. Liam's mind flashed to her tear-streaked face, and his expression darkened. But then, he snorted dismissively. I wish she would. He wishes I would point 7 years of devotion, and this is what I get in return. I withdrew my hand from the doorframe and turned to leave. It was early winter, and though the weather hadn't turned fully cold, I felt chilled to the bone. All these years, through the ups and downs, I had stayed by Liam's side, believing we would make it to the end. But for the sake of an engagement, he schemed to send me to the police station. How pathetic must I be to let him trample on me again and again? The sky started to drizzle, and the forecast warned of snow later that night as temperatures dropped. The snow in this coastal city, once it started, seemed endless. I used to hate winters the most. Liam would wrap me in his coat, his car always stocked with a blanket for me. Now, looking back, those moments of happiness I once clung to were never destined to last. The rain grew heavier, plastering my hair to my forehead. My steps faltered slightly, and I let out a bitter laugh. How did my life end up like this? Suddenly, I felt like I had lost all the passion I once had. The arguments over love now seemed laughable. Tightening my half-wet coat, a thought rooted itself firmly in my mind. I need to go somewhere warm, somewhere without winter, without snow, and most importantly, without Liam. I blocked all of Liam's contacts, along with those of his friends. A message from an unknown number arrived. It was Linda, Liam's fiancée. Liam is engaged to me now. You have no idea how much he loves me. You'd better leave and save yourself some dignity. Liam always hated you. Every time he saw you, he'd buy me gifts to make up for it. Everything you had, I have too, and more. Stop bothering him, or I'll make sure everyone knows how you've been trying to seduce my fiancé. Linda, the soft-spoken assistant who always seemed fragile, like a little kitten. How arrogant she's become. Would Liam approve of this side of her? She had sabotaged me countless times, spilling wine on my designer dress, breaking my diamond necklace. Back then, I thought she was just a scheming green tea girl, but Liam always sided with her. When I confronted her, he would only say lightly, "You have plenty of those things. She's just a young girl who doesn't know any better. Don't make things difficult for her." Plenty or not, they were mine, and anyone who ruined them should pay. I handed everything over to my lawyer, making sure Linda compensated me penny by penny. Then I removed my SIM card and tossed it in the trash. A scumbag and a schemer. I hope they stay locked together forever. When my parents saw me packing, they were worried. "Susan, are you sure about this? Liam has gone too far this time. We'll talk to his family and demand an explanation." Our families had long accepted that Liam and I would end up together. With similar backgrounds and a childhood spent growing up side by side, we were seen as the perfect match. "If you want to save me some dignity, don't," I replied firmly. "I'll go abroad and help my brother with his business." "Isn't that what you've always wanted for me?" My parents were shocked. I had always been reckless, chasing after Liam ever since high school. "Are you sure this isn't just a tantrum?" my mother asked cautiously. I hugged them tightly and said with determination, "I've been careless before, but I won't be anymore." My parents had always expected more from me, just as they did for my brother. I was the one who had been immature and willful, mistaking Liam for my whole world. All right. We Smith family kids are all capable. Once you've made up your mind, go for it. If you get into trouble, your dad will have your back." I nodded, choking back tears, then turned and boarded the plane heading overseas. Everything about Sea City was now a closed chapter in my life. That evening, Liam waited, either for Susan or for her call. He thought to himself, "If she calls, I'll pick up. Even if she cries and makes a scene, I'll put up with it." But nothing came. The feeling was like a kite whose string had snapped, leaving an unsettling emptiness in his chest. "Liam, I can't keep going. I need to sleep," Zach mumbled, barely able to keep his eyes open. They'd been drinking all night, but Liam had clearly been distracted, his mind elsewhere. Linda called, her voice soft and caring. "Liam, you're still up? I miss you. Can I come over?" Liam swirled his glass of wine and rejected her. "Zach and the guys are keeping me company. It's my last night as a bachelor. Be good and go to bed." Linda pouted and whined for a while before reluctantly hanging up. Zach leaned over to James, whispering, "What's up with Liam? Never heard of an engaged guy having a bachelor party." James turned his glass thoughtfully and let out a long sigh. "Bachelor party? He's obviously waiting for someone. Isn't it obvious? Usually, with Susan's temper, she'd have barged in by now. The fact that she hadn't showed up was a bad sign. Should I call Susan and see where she is?" James suggested. Liam got up and walked to the window, not objecting. "Do whatever you want." James called the police station first and learned that Susan had left after dark. Her phone, however, was unreachable. When Liam tried calling, he realized she had blocked him, and James and Zach too. "Liam, looks like Susan's really mad this time," Zach said. "Susan's never been the quiet type. What if she's serious this time? You sent her to the station and then got engaged to someone else. That's a bit much." James finally blurted out, having held it in all night. They started reaching out to Susan's friends, but no one had any information on her whereabouts. For the first time, the usually composed Liam lost his temper. He kicked over the coffee table and smashed a bottle, shards of glass scattering across the floor. He had never thought Susan would leave. She'd always been like a little shadow, trailing him, clinging to him. They'd been together for years, and their families had long approved of their match. As for Linda, the more she bullied Susan, the more he felt compelled to protect her. By the end, he couldn't even sort out what his feelings for Linda really were. His bloodshot eyes darted around as he muttered to himself, "She must be jealous. She's just throwing a tantrum. She'll come back once she calms down. She has to." Before Linda, Susan had thrown fits too. As long as he had the patience to coax her, she would forgive him and treat him even better than before. What he didn't realize was that this time, Susan wasn't running away in anger. She was leaving him for good. After a long journey, I spent the entire night on a plane. When I landed, it wasn't my brother who came to pick me up but his best friend, Finn. People said he and my brother had grown up together, so close they were practically inseparable. There were even rumors that Finn secretly harbored feelings for my brother. So I smiled politely and kept my guard up. "Long time no see, Finn." I greeted him. He was tall and handsome, dressed casually in jeans and a t-shirt, with an easy, carefree demeanor. His cheerful smile was as warm as the climate here. "Your brother had to leave town for a business meeting, so he sent me to get you," he explained, taking my suitcase and giving it a pat. "Hop in. I'm not a kid anymore." Finn was 5 years older than me. When we were younger, he used to come to our house and pull me around on my suitcase like a toy, whistling. He tossed my luggage into the car and drove me to my temporary place. The weather here was a comfortable 21 degrees Celsius, a pleasant change. His flashy red convertible blared music as we sped along. The warm breeze brushed away the weariness from my journey, and the frosty city had left in my heart. I liked this place. "Your brother's place is being renovated, so you'll have to stay at mine for a few days. The room's ready. Upstairs, second door on the right, across from mine," Finn said. The room had a large floor-to-ceiling window but was decorated in a ridiculously pink theme. A prime example of straight man aesthetics. Exhausted, I quickly unpacked a bit and collapsed into I and my dreams. I went back to the day I first met Liam in high school. He was leaning against the windowsill, wearing headphones and reading a book. The wind ruffled the trees outside, along with his hair and the hem of his white shirt. It was like a scene straight out of a movie. The girls dared each other to confess to him first. Without thinking, I stepped forward. "Liam, I like you," I said. He glanced up at me, a mocking smirk on his face. "Susan, are you an idiot?" I woke up abruptly, feeling secondhand embarrassment even in my dream. I really had been bold back then. I remembered that day clearly. Liam had just smirked and said nothing more. Finn's voice came from outside the door. "Susan, are you a pig? You've been sleeping for an entire day and night. Even a pig would lose to you. Get up and eat." The meal Finn cooked was incredible. He was famous for his quirks. If he didn't like a meal at a restaurant, he'd open his own. If he liked drumming, he'd start a band. If he got obsessed with rocks, he'd go deep into the mountains, only to be rescued by a helicopter. He'd even dropped out of university halfway through to race cars. His life was full of outrageous stories, so many that his family eventually sent him abroad, unable to handle him anymore. "Finn, what have you been up to these past few years?" I asked, curious. "Business," he replied without looking up. "And why are you here?" "Learning business from my brother." Our conversation felt dry, but then Finn frowned in thought and said seriously, "While your brother's away, learn from me first." And so, I began learning business from someone once labeled a troublemaker. It turned out that people couldn't be judged by appearances. Those who seemed aimless as kids could grow up to be incredibly sharp, and just as dangerous. I started as a small assistant under Finn, mostly fetching tea, delivering water, and photocopying documents, tasks that hardly seemed worthy of my impressive academic credentials. A new girl in the secretarial office caught my eye. Her makeup was heavy, and her neckline was suspiciously low. She snatched the coffee I was holding and waltzed into the CEO's office. "Mr. Gray, here's your coffee," she purred. Finn didn't even lift his eyes from his desk. "Before you spill that coffee on me, I should warn you. My suit and shoes together cost $230,000. Handmade. 3 months to tailor. Are you sure you can afford to compensate me?" The girl hesitated, quietly withdrawing her foot that was just about to accidentally knock over the cup. Instead, she bent over low as she placed the coffee on his desk. Finn pulled out a handkerchief and covered his nose. "Are you wearing poison? That scent is so overpowering I feel my sinusitis acting up." She ran out of the office in tears, her makeup smudged beyond recognition. I stood outside, holding back my laughter with great difficulty. "Assistant Smith, nice posture," Finn remarked. I stiffened, unsure how to respond. It's all right. Thank you, Mr. Gray, for the compliment. You're so good at standing like a soldier. Should I transfer you to the security department?" No, please don't." "Then get in here." I resisted the urge to call my brother and ask what Finn had gone through these past years to make him so sharp-tongued. Finn was lounging in his chair, one leg crossed over the other, his long fingers tapping lazily on the keyboard. His sharp eyes were focused on the screen, and a faint smirk played on his lips. "Did you write this quarterly report?" I swallowed nervously. "Yes, Mr. Gray." "Not bad," he nodded. Thrilled, I quickly flattered him. "Thank you, Mr. Gray. I'll keep working hard." He glanced up at me. "It reads like Hamlet. Rewrite it. I want it on my desk by the end of the day." My heart shattered. But giving up wasn't in my nature. It was just a report. Surely I could manage that. I ended up working on it until 10 p.m., still not done? "Your writing is making me hungry," Finn complained. Sitting nearby, I squirmed in the luxurious leather chair in his office. An hour later, his ordered meal arrived. "Eat first, then finish it." "You're not going to get it done anytime soon anyway," he said, unbothered. "Could someone poison him, please?" He was infuriating. By the time I got home, it was already past midnight. After a quick wash, I collapsed into bed. Work had consumed all my time recently, and I hadn't dreamed in ages. Half asleep, I vaguely heard my phone ringing. It was my lawyer calling about the case I'd filed before leaving the country. "Miss Smith, Linda has refused to compensate you. Mr. Luis has offered to cover it, but only if you meet with him in person." Now he wanted to see me? What game was he playing? I don't need his money. "Tell them if they refuse to pay, I'll sue Linda for intentional damage to personal property. Let them weigh their options." Hanging up, I felt wide awake. I went downstairs to get a glass of water and noticed the lights still on in the dining room. "You scared me," I blurted out, startled. It was Finn, sitting upright and working. "Only guilty people get scared," he quipped. Without looking up, I muttered under my breath and walked over with my glass. "Wait, are you editing my quarterly report?" Finn shook his head, exasperated. "This is for the company's shareholders. I don't want to scare them into thinking the company's going under and give them heart attacks." I wanted to strangle him, but I was under his roof and had to swallow my pride. "Fine, have fun with that. I'm going back to sleep," I said, turning away. But my footing slipped, and I landed squarely in his my lips brushed against his face, and my upper body pressed against his chest. The scene was awkwardly intimate, alone in a room, with me sitting on him in such an inappropriate position. His gaze lingered on my lips, his chest rising and falling heavily. I could hear his heartbeat and catch the faint, clean scent of his aftershave. Luckily, I didn't spill the water. I stammered, making an excuse as I scrambled to stand. His hand rested briefly on my waist. "You can't even stand on flat ground." "Unbelievable," he muttered, turning his head away and tapping randomly on his keyboard. "Good night. Sleep early," I said hastily, retreating upstairs. I couldn't shake the feeling that his eyes followed me as I left. The next morning, Finn came downstairs with dark circles under his eyes for breakfast. "Mr. Gray, did you pull an all-nighter?" I asked, surprised. Was the report even difficult for him? "At home, just call me bro," he replied, sitting down with his breakfast. I hid my smile behind my coffee. The office. Finn wore sunglasses, prompting gossip in the break room. "Miss Smith, what's up with Mr. Gray today?" someone asked. "Probably just trying out a new look," I lied smoothly. Finally, the weekend arrived. Finn insisted on playing host, taking me on a tour and introducing me to the local cuisine. Just as I got into his Maybach, my phone buzzed with a call from an unfamiliar domestic number. And no one knew this number except my family, close friends, and lawyer. I answered, only to hear Linda's tearful voice. "Miss Smith, I'm so sorry to bother you, but I'm desperate. I didn't mean to ruin your clothes and necklace. I'm really sorry. Liam already said he'd compensate you. Can't you just let this go? You're making things so hard for him. Is it because he didn't choose you? Do you really care so little about all those years you spent together? Fine, I'll leave if that's what you want. That way, Liam won't have to suffer anymore." I wanted to curse. This green tea manipulator was addicted to playing the victim. Finn glanced over, puzzled, as I forced a smile and hung up. "Nice audiobook voice acting. So dramatic and full of emotion," he said dryly. "Haha, yeah," I replied with a weak laugh. He paused, then couldn't resist commenting, "Susan, no offense, but aren't you too old for these cheesy romance dramas? No wonder your reports read like that." I had no retort. Even Finn could see through her act, yet Liam, that idiot, always fell for her nonsense. And now Linda was pulling this? Did Liam really think I'd come crawling back for more mistreatment? Finn took me to a renowned mountain restaurant. The car wound its way along a narrow mountain road for 2 hours, the cliffs outside the window steep and dizzying. As soon as I got out of the car, the scenery took my breath away. Ethereal clouds rolled over the peaks, creating a dreamy, misty atmosphere. The restaurant owner came out to greet us with a big smile, enthusiastically hugging Finn. When he turned toward me for another hug, Finn stepped in and blocked him. "In a place like this, what you eat hardly matters. The views alone are enough to fill you up. Miss Smith, you're the first girl Finn has ever brought here," the owner whispered as he served the dishes. I widened my eyes in surprise. Could Finn actually have feelings for my brother? After all, we look quite alike. "Every couple that visits our restaurant can post their photo over there," the owner added, gesturing toward a large wooden structure. "That's the sacred tree of the mountain. With its blessing, the couple is destined to be together forever," he explained. Finn grinned at me, and before I could dodge, he wrapped a long arm around my shoulder, pulling me close. And just like that, we ended up with a photo of our faces pressed together, looking almost intimate, pasted in the restaurant as a blessed couple. Watching him smile goofily at the photo, I started mentally rehearsing how to explain the concept of substitute relationships to him. Liam's sudden appearance was completely unexpected. I was sitting in Finn's bright yellow sports car after work, heading home. Across the street, under a large oak tree, stood Liam, tall and straight-backed. His sharp features and cool demeanor gave him a commanding presence. In terms of looks, he was undeniably top-tier. When he saw me getting out of the car, his body seemed to shudder slightly. But none of this mattered anymore. Before leaving the country, I had decided to cut ties with everyone and everything from my past, just like the old Susan who spent 7 years naively devoted to Liam, believing in love. Night fell, but Liam remained. Sitting at the dining table eating noodles, I couldn't help but sneak glances out the window. Under the dim glow of the street lamp, his figure looked particularly desolate. "Who's that guy standing outside like a doorman?" Finn asked, striking a casual pose by the floor-to-ceiling window, coffee cup in hand. "Liam," I replied, suddenly worried he might escalate the situation by calling the police. Finn exaggerated in, "Oh," in response, clearly recognizing the name. "So that's the infamous family Luis moron with a sesame seed for a brain." I rolled my eyes, speechless. Finn put down his cup and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" "I don't like anyone standing outside my house, coveting my things." The sudden burst of domineering words left me completely baffled. His things? Did he mean me? Finn glanced at me, then at my bowl of noodles. "Hurry up and eat. They're getting soggy." I couldn't focus on the noodles, too worried that Finn might pick a fight with Liam. To my surprise, Finn locked the door from the outside. I stayed by the window, nervously peeking through a gap in the curtains. Finn walked up to Liam, and the two exchanged a few words. Liam glanced toward me with an expression of despair, then turned and drove away. "What did you say to him?" I asked curiously. Knowing Liam, he wouldn't have traveled all this way just to leave so easily. Finn smiled innocently as he headed upstairs. "I told him you're pregnant and need rest." "Finn." I grabbed a pillow from the sofa and hurled it at him, hitting him squarely on the slipper. This man was infuriating, but at least he saved me a headache. That evening, Finn had a dinner meeting with a client. After work, just as I left the office, I ran into Liam again. "Have you had enough of this yet?" he demanded, his persistence starting to feel like a haunting. "I thought you left so decisively because you were throwing a tantrum," he continued, "but it turns out you'd already lined up someone else." He stepped forward to grab my wrist, but I sidestepped. "Touch me, and the security guards will gladly escort you to the police station for a chat." Liam hesitated, his eyes wavering as if remembering something. His bravado vanished. "Susan, why are you making things difficult for Linda? Don't you see? The more stubborn and unreasonable you act, the further you push me away." Still about Linda. I wanted to laugh bitterly. I'd love nothing more than to push him right into her arms. You can cover that small amount for her, I replied coldly. But keep your distance from me, especially since you already have a fiancé. I turned and walked away. He followed. You weren't like this before. You're still mad, aren't you? I know what I did that day was wrong. I'm sorry. I almost laughed out loud. Did he think this was a game? A slap followed by a sweet treat. Such crude tactics had kept me hooked for 7 years. You should apologize to your fiancé instead, I said with a sharp smile. She called me, saying you refused to pay off her debt. Truly pitiful. Liam froze, clearly shocked that Linda had contacted me behind his back. I only did that to force you to see me. We used to be so good together. I thought you'd always stay by my side. I stopped, turning to look at him. All I saw was immaturity and absurdity. Liam, don't play the devoted lover card with me. You know exactly what I care about, yet you cross the line again and again, making yourself miserable and me look petty. If you don't care, then neither do I. I can't forget you. Believe me, you'll forget me too. Let's leave it at that. Don't come looking for me again. Consider it a favor to me, letting me keep some dignity. Liam didn't follow. This country had a mild, spring-like climate year-round, yet Liam felt as if he were sinking into an icy sea, helplessly drowning. Her figure grew fainter in the distance. Lately, his thoughts often drifted to the past, to the high school and college years they'd spent together. 17-year-old Susan had a smile brighter than the sun. When she confessed her feelings for him, his heart had skipped a beat. But somewhere along the way, she became clingy and jealous, throwing tantrums over every little thing. Even when he simply talked to other girls, he began to find her exhausting, always opposing her just to keep her at arm's length. As soon as I stepped out of the car, the scenery blew me away. Ethereal clouds floated around, creating a misty, dreamlike atmosphere. The restaurant owner came out to greet us warmly, giving Finn a hearty hug. When he turned to hug me, Finn stepped in and blocked him. In a place like this, the food almost doesn't matter. The view alone is enough to fill you up. Miss Smith, you're the first girl Finn has ever brought here, the owner whispered conspiratorially while serving our dishes. I widened my eyes in shock. Could Finn really have feelings for my brother? After all, my brother and I do look quite alike. Every couple that comes here takes a photo to post on the wall over there, the owner explained, pointing to a large wooden frame. That's the sacred tree of the mountain. With its blessing, couples are destined to be together forever. Finn smirked at me and, before I could dodge, pulled me into his arms with one swift motion. And just like that, we had a photo of our faces pressed together, looking close and intimate, pinned on the restaurant's wall as a blessed couple. Watching Finn smile goofily at the photo, I silently plotted how to explain the concept of replacements are a bad idea. Liam's sudden appearance caught me completely off guard. I was sitting in Finn's bright yellow sports car after work, heading home. Across the street, under a towering oak tree, stood Liam, tall and upright. His sharp features and cold demeanor gave him an imposing presence. In terms of appearance alone, he was undeniably exceptional. When he saw me getting out of the car, his body stiffened noticeably. But none of this mattered anymore. Before leaving the country, I had made up my mind to draw a clear line between my past and present, just as I had drawn a line under the old Susan, who had wasted 7 years blindly chasing after Liam. Night fell, but Liam didn't leave. While eating noodles at the dining table, I couldn't help but glance out the window a few times. Under the dim streetlight, his silhouette looked particularly lonely. Who's that guy standing outside like a doorman? Finn asked, casually leaning against the floor-to-ceiling window with a coffee cup in one hand and his other hand in his pocket. Liam, I replied cautiously, worried Finn might escalate things by calling the police. Finn exaggerated and, clearly recognizing the name. So that's the famous Liam Lewis, the brainless wonder. I rolled my eyes, speechless. Finn set his cup down and headed for the door. Where are you going? I don't like anyone standing at my door, eyeing my things. That sudden domineering statement left me dumbfounded. His things? Did he mean me? Finn glanced at me and then at my bowl of noodles. Eat up. They're getting soggy. I had no appetite anymore. Too worried Finn might start a fight with Liam. To my surprise, Finn locked the door from the outside before heading out. I stayed by the window, peeking through the curtain. Finn walked up to Liam, and the two exchanged a few words. Liam glanced toward the window, his expression filled with despair, before finally driving away. "What did you say to him?" I asked, unable to contain my curiosity. Liam wouldn't have come all this way just to leave so easily. Finn smiled innocently as he headed upstairs. "I told him you're pregnant and need rest." "Finn." I grabbed a pillow and threw it at him, hitting him squarely on the slipper. This man was infuriating, but at least he saved me the trouble of dealing with Liam. That evening, Finn had a dinner meeting with a client. After work the next day, I ran into Liam again. "Have you had enough of this?" he demanded, his persistence becoming borderline harassment. "I thought you left so decisively because you were throwing a tantrum," he continued, "but it turns out you've already found someone new." He stepped forward, trying to grab my wrist, but I sidestepped. "If you touch me, the security guards will gladly escort you to the police station for a chat." Liam hesitated, his confidence shaken. "Susan, why are you making things difficult for Linda? Don't you see? The more stubborn and unreasonable you act, the further you push me away." Still about Linda. I wanted to laugh bitterly. "I'd gladly push him right into her arms. Then pay her debts for her," I said coldly. "But stop bothering me, especially since you already have a fiancé." I walked away, but he followed. "You weren't like this before. You're still mad, aren't you?" I know I went too far that day, and I'm sorry. I almost laughed out loud. Did he think this was some kind of game? Slap me, then sweet-talk me into forgiveness? I couldn't believe I fell for this for 7 years. "You should apologize to your fiancé instead," I said sharply. She called me, crying about how you wouldn't pay her debts. Truly pitiful. Liam froze, clearly not expecting Linda to have contacted me. "I only did that to force you to see me," he muttered. "We used to be so good together. I thought you'd always stay by my side." I stopped and turned to look at him. All I saw was immaturity and absurdity. "Liam, stop pretending to be a devoted lover. You knew what mattered to me, yet you crossed the line again and again, making both of us miserable. If you don't care, then neither do I. I can forget you. Believe me, you'll forget me too. Let's leave it at that. Don't come looking for me again. Consider it a favor to me, letting me keep some dignity." Liam didn't follow this time. This country has a mild, spring-like climate year-round, yet Liam felt as if he were sinking into an icy sea, helpless and alone. Her figure grew fainter as she walked away. Lately, his thoughts often drifted to the past. 17-year-old Susan had a smile brighter than the sun. When she confessed her feelings for him, his heart skipped a beat. But somewhere along the way, she became clingy and jealous, and he began to find her exhausting. He started pushing her away, yet now, he realized she had always been the one chasing after him, and this time, he knew she would never come back. Translation: I received so many gifts this Christmas that my hands were full, an incredibly rewarding holiday. The only calm person was my brother, who looked at Finn with a scrutinizing, older brother's protective gaze. "Brother, when did you realize Finn had feelings for me? Do you remember the first time he came to our house? You were in elementary school back then." What a beast. "When I was little, my brother didn't even want to play with me, but Finn would use a suitcase to pull me around the house and even let me ride on his back like a horse. On your 18th birthday, he prepared a gift for you. But since you were upset with Liam and locked yourself in your room, he didn't get the chance to give it to you." "What gift?" I asked, surprised, my heart starting to race. "He found a stone in the forest. It's actually a meteorite. He promised to give you a star." A casual joke I made, but he took it seriously and almost lost his life for it. My heart was suddenly overwhelmed with ripples of emotion. My brother patted my shoulder, his smile warm and gentle. "He's waited for you for many years. When he heard you were going abroad, he practically begged me in tears to create opportunities for you too." What could I do? I had no choice but to accept the business he brought to the table. "You're insufferable." As expected, anyone close to Finn was no saint. At midnight, as the new year approached, Finn arranged for the grandest and most beautiful fireworks display in Sea City, just for me. Brilliant fireworks burst across the sky, spelling out my name, followed by a heart-piercing arrow. It was so typical of his straight man aesthetics that I struggled to compliment him that I thought that was the end, but I underestimated his imagination and creativity. As the fireworks ended, thousands of drones took to the skies, forming different images of the places Finn had visited. There were mountains and oceans, and in the middle of the pictures was Finn, grinning widely and holding up something in front of the camera. I knew it was a star, the star he had promised to give me on my 18th birthday. The drones then transformed into a message. "I'll take you to see the stars and the sea. Susan, my love." It was so cheesy, yet I was deeply moved from the moment we confirmed our relationship to our wedding. It took less than a year. Finn, however, said he had waited over a decade and couldn't wait any longer. He joked that, even in his dreams, he was plotting how to marry me. On our wedding day, Liam's parents came. His mother held my hand, her eyes red. "Susan, it's our family's loss." Later, I learned that Linda had escaped her monitors and, in retaliation, sold confidential company information to competitors. She ended up in prison, and the Luis family was severely weakened, never regaining their former glory. As Finn and I exchanged rings on the stage, I caught a glimpse of someone in the crowd who looked a lot like Liam. He was wearing a white shirt, just like the day I confessed to him. But things had changed. I hoped he understood. Once something is missed, it becomes a lifelong regret.
People change.
No one waits forever. Finn pulled me close, kissing me on stage. Before letting go, he lightly bit my lip and whispered, "Focus, my love." I blushed furiously. His bold antics had only increased lately. After the wedding, we headed straight to the airport. He was taking me to see the stars and the sea. The itinerary was already set. Both families had carefully reviewed the plans to ensure there were no risks before giving their approval. "Susan, pinch me. This feels like a dream." I leaned on his shoulder, planting a gentle kiss on his cheek. "Does this feel real now?" His gaze darkened, and he kissed me, his hand on the back of my head, deepening the kiss. "Susan, do you know what I regret the most?" he asked, out of breath from the kiss. I shook my head. What could someone like him possibly regret? Looking at me with deep affection, he said, "I regret not confessing to you when you were 18. If I had been braver, would anyone else even have had a chance? From now on, I'll treat you even better and make up for all the years we missed." Smiling, I snuggled into his arms, thinking that this was what happiness must feel like. Life is vast, and who you meet, or miss, determines your destiny. True love is what remains. "Susan, I've been working out lately. I'm in top shape, so don't worry," he whispered teasingly in my ear. Blushing furiously, I thought, whoever said he's a straight man clearly misunderstood. He just bloomed late. Extra. When I heard Susan broke up with Liam, I gave myself half a day off to celebrate and brainstorm ways to bring her back. When I learned she was coming abroad, I went straight to her brother with a contract. Her brother, the overprotective type, ridiculed and criticized me for years after realizing my feelings for her. Sharp-tongue? It was honed through countless defeats at his hands, rising each time stronger than before. Luckily, he's a businessman and loves profit. I brought her close, nurtured her like a rare flower, and waited for her to fall in love. When she thought I loved her brother, I almost fainted. Who would confuse us? Did people think we'd poison each other to death? Now, all that matters is my star has finally come home. Our honeymoon lasted 3 months, and I fell more deeply in love with her every day. This morning, even the local cafe owner received a round of my enthusiastic compliments. Love changes everything. My brother-in-law urged me to make more money to ensure his sister is well taken care of. As a husband, I'll make the company thrive and create a legacy for our future. Star, my love. We're together forever. One last thing. Can she stop calling me Finn? Hearing her call me husband would be the sweetest thing in the world. I've increased my workout intensity. Life feels more hopeful than ever.